Jay wanted to come in.
Yeah, I'm going to say this before I then very rudely get up and leave the stage, because I had to catch a train to go and do a radio broadcast down in Rye.
We're coming to an end now.
I know, but I have to go. It's a very circular thing. I just do. I'm afraid. I just have to get off the stage. It's a very circular thing. Forget CAP, forget all of that. If we got a better contract between the supermarkets and agriculture, if there was therefore more investment in agriculture, if it became a more thriving business, younger people would see it as a reasonable thing to go into. It's as simple as that. We need investment in agriculture, and that requires a grocery ombudsman. On that point, I'm off.
Thank you very much indeed. That's great, sort of manufacturing his own dramatic exit there. Let's just take one more question from Richard Thomas, because this can round up the whole debate quite nicely. Richard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question was actually to Jay, so just canned that idea, but I can ping it over to the rest of the panel if you like. Yeah, my name's Richard Thomas. I'm a Vice Chairman of our local branch in Herefordshire, and I'm also a member of the Next Generation Forum. I love farming. It's my passion. It's what I do, and I absolutely love it. And my passion is also to around the promotion of agriculture. I'm not at the level of Guy Smith, or at least not yet. And I think, you know, on that sort of front, he does a great job. But what would your advice be to our industry to improve our already good public image and communicate the great work we do to the public?
Sean, let me see. We'll take our second sort of outspoken panelist here, and go on, tell us what you think.
Right. You're entering an era when the farming industry is going to be seen as much more important than it has been for the last 20 years. So you're starting from a better base. That's point number one. Point number two, I've said it ad nauseum, but I'll say it again. Stop holding your hand out to the government to do everything for you. I even heard a young entrepreneur just now saying, what can you do to guarantee my future for me? No other entrepreneur does that. No other industry does that. People get on and go for it themselves based on their skills and their knowledge. And that's the sort of mindset which needs to be you know, inculcated in the farming industry. But let me say one last thing to you. If you don't believe in your industry, don't expect anyone else to. It's time you folks started to speak up for it. It's time you folks stopped cowering to these people of a rope sandal persuasion who've got no interest really in a modern farming industry. They want you to be a living museum or glorified park keepers or something. You should stand up for what is one of the most vital industries in this country. You should recognise your time is coming, and you should sell your industry. If you don't do it, why do you expect me or anyone else to do it? It's in your hands. You do it.
William, just from your Next Generation Forum, I mean, this must be a core, key issue for you. I mean, what are you doing about it? How are you tackling this?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on, Richard, and we talk a lot about it as well. I mean, as Sean has said, no one's going to go out there and promote it for us. We have to sort of put ourselves out there and grasp the opportunity, as you say. Just to go back to what Jay was saying, there is no greater incentive, really, than the profitability of the industry. That is the biggest lure and carrot to get people involved in the industry and people take note. And it's reassuring that, you know, back in 2007, 2008, we saw farming move from Farming Today and Countryfile to Panorama and, you know, the Jeremy Vine show. It all of a sudden became more relevant, and that's what it took. It took slight shocks in the global economy, all the sort of economic theory and supply and demand to actually work, which I've been waiting for a long time, and glad to see it happen. So just to go back to one or two issues before I finish on the council holding thing, it's quite short-sighted that council holdings are being sold off. I mean, I know they're not the overall panacea, but they're part of the mix of getting people involved in the industry. But as Jim has said, there is certain blockage, which perhaps there should be incentives to move people off after a certain duration. I'm not sure how that would work. But access to capital and tax incentives are certainly things which Jim can address. I mean, we talked about CAP reform and the young farmer element being a short-term measure. It's certainly something I wouldn't like to dismiss. I'm sure it's got a place. It'll work for succession on farms. It'll work for getting new entrants. Maybe people like Robert Law we saw yesterday, a very inspiring farmer, that kind of person. But it doesn't actually embrace everybody. There's another element out there. People who've wisely chosen not to be ahead of a holding, but actually want a career in the industry, a modern industry where there are a variety of jobs. And when we talk of Nocton dairies, there was going to be 80 jobs on one holding. So you're looking at not just the head of holding, you're looking at a broad spectrum of people. And I think that can be lost as well. And just to round up, Sean seems adamant that no subsidies is his way forward. I'm not sure what timetable he puts on that, but I think 10 years. I hope we have no distortion across the world to match that as well then. But he seems to be keen on a perfect scenario of economic theory, consolidation in the supply chain, consolidation on farms. I'm just wondering, have you taken into account the consumer's view? And perhaps there is a mix, there is a potential for consolidation in large farms and also the smaller type, because at the end of the day, consumer are king. And I mentioned Nocton, and that's probably one case in point that large-scale farming isn't actually necessarily the way forward.
Yeah.
Well, totally.
Just very, very briefly, in 2 sentences each, Mary and Jim, how to help with the image of farming?
To come out of off their farms a bit more and do what Mary Mead's done with Yo Valley. I love those adverts for Yo Valley down on the farm. She's invested in her business. She's followed consumer trends. I'm always frustrated that Muller and Danone are the big yogurt brands in the supermarket when I want to buy British yogurts. And there's really only Yo Valley and Rachel's Organic that do that and that sold through the multiples. So come out, have fun, and listen to your consumers, and in particular, listen to your wives, because they're the ones that are buying the food and putting it on the table, and they've got an awful lot to say.
It's very sexist.
So we need some Yo Valley farmers to come next year.
And husbands.
Jim.
It is worth pointing out Muller is British yogurt too. It's all
It's German owned. German owned.
You're in a global business.
It's all produced from good Shropshire milk, and we should be proud of it.
Go back to Germany.
Well, yes, but if we start going down who owns which companies, it's a very different story. The fact is it's British food, and that's what matters as far as I'm concerned. I think, I'm not going to go as far as Sean does, but I do, and I've said this before, I do want the industry to have to be able to stop apologising for extra special treatment in this way, whether it's subsidies or whether it's exemption from this. Or exemption from that. I want this industry to say we are a very important industry. We are providing the most important product anybody could want in this earth, which is their food, and we're doing it in a welfare-friendly way. We're doing it in a way that we look after the environment, and we're responding to consumer demand. And I always think there's a bit of a difference between consumer views and consumer practice, and it's the consumer practice that actually influences our behaviour. And then we can stand tall as an industry and be proud of what we're doing. But whilst the public have this perception that they still do have it a bit, that farmers are all wanting some special treatment in one way or another, then they will always be in this sort of more apologetic mood. And I just want the day to come, and it isn't going to happen overnight. We're not going to get rid of subsidies overnight, nor can we, because the industry in the short term depends on it. But I do hope that the day will dawn, I believe it will dawn, when the whole issue of direct payments, all that sort of support will have gone. I believe it's inevitable over a long period of time, and the industry can stand proud and tall.
But until that moment, and in the short term, when the next big hurdle is the CAP negotiations, I haven't heard from this room people asking for special treatment, but they say for fair treatment. They don't want to be disadvantaged.
Oh.
And can you guarantee that you can fight for that in Brussels?
Absolutely. I guarantee we will fight for fair treatment for British farmers in Brussels, and British taxpayers and British consumers, and for that matter, the British environment. But we want fair treatment. As somebody said in the session this morning, we're in a common market, a single market, and it's a common policy, and therefore everybody should be affected in the same way.
Fine. Well, on that note, I think we will draw to a close. Thank you very much indeed to all our panellists. Some great views. We certainly couldn't take politics out of farming, I don't think. It's all too complex, but very interesting indeed. And thank you very much indeed to you all for your attention, for your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but we got to quite a number. And I'm now going to hand you over to Peter Kendall for his closing words. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Cathy, and thank you for getting those words out of Jim Pace at the end. I'll be looking up fair in my dictionary when I get home just to see what he means by making sure we get fair treatment in CAP. Sean Rickard, I don't know where you've been. I think since you've stopped working for the NFU, you must have stopped reading our publications. For 5 years we've been banging along about why farming matters. We have publication after publication talking about the importance of this industry. There's a gang of farmers in this room who are trying to put together at the moment farming in the park. We have Johnny Ball, who goes around inner cities continually peddling the importance of farming. Farm Sunday now gets to hundreds of thousands of people. This is an industry that is really upbeat about its future. It really does want to sell that message, and I think there's a lot of people in this room and around the country I meet who are busting a gut to change that perception you highlighted. And of course, William touched on it as well. Why, when we have a political session, it's because actually we know the world's changing. We want to, and I play my words back to Jim Pace again, we want to make sure it's unravelled evenly and fairly, and we don't disadvantage farmers in the UK. Why? Because the same as when I go and buy a new combine, and my brother's just ordered a new combine, which I'll be delighted to get Jay Rayner to come and see with the one show if he'd like to, when we compete with other people in Europe on the same systems. And when I go and compare a single farm payment to my farm, to one in Schleswig-Holstein, and find it's €100 a hectare more in Schleswig-Holstein, we need to unravel this in an even-handed way. And then, of course, there will still be imperfections that need some protection for the farming industry, but we are genuinely really positive about it. And I actually thought what came out of yesterday morning's political session with Caroline Spellman and the Commissioner Chalosh is actually there's a lot to play for on CAP reform, and of course the budget will play a big part in it. I was really pleased to listen to Robert Law. He's actually one of the rugby players who scarred me from playing against Robert Law in the past, usually on the same side because he's so clumsy. But the positive messages he made about the business he'd built over the years, the fact that shepherds were being paid really well because they're the sort of people he needed to work for him on his business, was just a beltingly good story. And Sean, it was bragging about what you can do in farming. Then to have this morning, and to get Martin Taylor, the chairman of Syngenta, when you looked at his CV, and you saw this was a guy who had been chairman of a bank, chairman of Courtaulds, chairman of W.H. Smith. He now is chairman of Syngenta, and he considers himself fortunate to have come into agriculture in middle age. And he actually touched on exactly the point we've talked about, the need for us to get out in front of the public and talk about what an exciting industry this is. I owe a massive thanks to Gwyn Jones. We've moved here, we've taken a big gamble to come to this venue for the first time. Why? Because we couldn't get everyone in to the old venue. We've actually, because of security measures, been turning people away for about a fortnight. I reckon we could have had 1,200 people here yesterday. Why? Because people are interested in what we're talking about and where the industry is going. So a big round of applause to Gwyn for having the bravery to move. The one last thanks, and this is a very specific one. Gwyn would come in and say, we're going to move the venue. It then gets dumped on Val Gatwood, who has to then deliver it in the office. There's one person who's been coordinating a whole team of staff in the NFU, coming to a new venue, having TB protesters. We owe a massive thank you to Val, so please acknowledge that. My last concluding comment would be is that the title of the conference has been Meeting the Challenge. We've had some really interesting, I think, sections of this conference. When you've seen the contribution from William and the other young farmers who have spoken, we know, and I said it in my conference speech yesterday, we need young people because they are the future of the industry. We need them to come and get involved in the NFU. Actually, Meeting the Challenge will be all about the people who get involved in farming. Thank you very much indeed. Just one last point of housekeeping. We will start the AGM in 10 minutes, please. That'll be 20 to 4. 10 minutes, 20 to 4 for the AGM. Thank you very much indeed.